Members of the Chinese legislature, the National People's Congress, have overwhelmingly endorsed sweeping and controversial new security laws for Hong Kong. The bill, which now passes to China's senior leadership, has caused deep concern among those who say it could end Hong Kong's unique status. Here's a look at what the law will do. Firstly, it will criminalise conduct in Hong Kong that harms national security, a measure pro-democracy campaigners fear could be used to target them. It permits China's national intelligence agencies to set up offices in Hong Kong to oversee its enforcement. Beijing will also be able to place the measure into the basic law, that's the mini-constitution on how Hong Kong is run, effectively bypassing the territory's own lawmakers. Li Zhanzhu, a member of the Chinese Communist Party's Standing Committee, welcomed the law at the closing ceremony of the National People's Congress.
This meeting deliberates and approves a draft decision of the National People's Congress for establishing a legal system and enforcement mechanism for Hong Kong to safeguard national security. This is a major move to practice one country, two systems, and is also in line with China's constitution and the basic law of Hong Kong. It also aligns with the fundamental interests of people in mainland China as well as Hong Kong residents.
Well, our correspondent Stephen McDonald said it was no surprise the National People's Congress overwhelmingly approved the legislation.
Look, it's a rubber stamp session. There was never going to be any resisting this at the National People's Congress, but even so, 2,787 in favour and only 1 against, with 6 abstentions. It is quite something. However, what it means, though, is that this bill now goes to the next stage, which is that the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress works out the details of the law and writes it up, and it could actually come into effect before the end of the year. Now, what's not clear is exactly what types of speech or exactly what actions might constitute treason under this new law. There are some concerns that even calling for Hong Kong independence could be seen as secession. So these crimes like treason or secession, they are serious, and at the moment people are being charged, activists, with rioting and assembly charges, and to tell the truth, not that many people have actually been punished under that process, although more than 7,000 have been charged over the last year. Under this new law, well, these crimes like treason, that can mean decades in prison. And so this is why there's been a lot of concern in Hong Kong amongst the pro-democracy camp that it could be eroding the city's freedoms. Now, of course, those who defend the bill, though, would say that the protests have gone too far, they've been too destructive, and something had to be done to try and rein in this movement.
Stephen McDonald, let's cross live now to Hong Kong and speak to our correspondent Martin Yip. Martin, tell us more about the reaction of those pro-democracy protesters to what's been happening at the National People's Congress. Do they feel now that their efforts over the last year or so have been in vain to some extent? Do they feel that Hong Kong's status is changing permanently?
Well, the answer to this question would actually be something that we still have to wait to see. The reason I'm saying so is that we've seen rather violent clashes in the past couple of days and over the past weekend, literally after this bill in Beijing was announced in the previous weekend. But then they've been sort of venting their anger already. They've been talking about this, what you just mentioned, the demise of prosperity in Hong Kong as well as a one country, two system. But the game changer probably would be developments in the United States as well. You have the Secretary of State, Pompeo, reporting to the Congress that they are not seeing Hong Kong as having autonomy anymore, and that might trigger some sort of response, at least from Washington, D.C., and that would be more diplomatic confrontation between Beijing and Washington, which end up with some people in some sort of speculation at this stage. But that doesn't mean they are not angry at all, and that's why we saw what we saw yesterday, the clashes in the street between the protesters and and riot police, while also at the same time we have other groups voicing concern just after this law has been passed, like what I'm just reading this report from the local broadcaster RTHK, is the people from the arts industry voicing concern on this very piece of law to be imposed by Beijing. They are raising scenarios like if somebody goes to a concert and somebody sang a song that bears lyrics that are seen as subversive, would those audience members of audience being ended up being charged with the same charge? So there's so many questions to be answered from Beijing, from the Hong Kong government, to satisfy people's worries.
OK, Martin, thank you very much. Martin Yip in Hong Kong.